Welcome to Forward Progress on the Hammer Betting Network on this Monday, February 12th. Today, we're going to be talking about the big game last night, some high leverage spots that may have swung the game, and we're going to also have a long overdue discussion on Mahomes and Brady and who is the real GOAT. I feel like the NFL broadcast, when a game goes long and there's overtime and then they say, joining us, if you were watching this game, welcome in. This is what we're doing. Well, if you're watching Circles Off, welcome to Forward Progress. This is the last show of the season. We're going to recap everything. Before we get into that, do me a favor, like and subscribe to this content. It's greatly appreciated. You guys have been great all year. Raised the subscriber count, boosted us in the algorithm. We appreciate it. Of course, none of this will be possible with our sponsor, Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sports book and available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what the pros have known for the last 25 years. Everyday competitive odds. Your trusted sports book. Bet smart. Bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus in Ontario. I'm joined today by Cleve TA plus EV Better, cleveanalytics.com. And Hitman, this is your Monday debut on Forward Progress Channel, Pro Sports Better, creator on the Hammer Betting Network. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this. I know the day after the Super Bowl, everybody else is taking the day off. They're too lazy to come to work, and the three of us are all dedicated in here. Before we get into the game, can we talk about the anthem? Because it's no secret that we had some information about the anthem time and what we thought was going to be bang on 88 seconds. And then Reba McEntire decides she wants to repeat the last word and throw a lot of controversy in the mix. Do you think there's going to be a new guideline moving forward from books that say, okay, it's going to either have to be the last note or the first word brave? Because I don't remember a situation like this happening before, Hitman.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I thought when it happened was I was asking people that bet it, like, what were the house rules on each specific site? And I thought that it was always after the first brave. So I was ready, as some people on gambling Twitter would say, I was ready to message some customer service agents and give them hell, But I don't know. I see that most sites graded a loss, at least the sites I was playing with. Fortunately, I couldn't get as much down as years past. It used to be a time where it was just a free 5-figure day for a lot of professional bettors when the anthem would happen. Couldn't get nearly that much down this year. So took a small loss. But I will say to Pizzola, if you caught that tweet, Pizzola's tweeting about oh, please let it be 88 seconds or whatever. It ended up not being that. We lost. We all lost on it. I mean, Pizzola, have you ever watched The Longest Yard? And the warden says to Captain Knauer at the end, he says, I can't believe you couldn't even win a fixed game. I understand I went 3-600 on Forward Progress this year, but to lose a fixed event on Pizzola's end, that's as low as it gets, in my opinion, George. I don't know if you agree or not.
Yeah, man.
You couldn't even win a fixed game, Pizzola. So
I was just starting to recover from Trevor Lawrence's broken leg that the information we got from Rob, and he took us off the cliff again, 2 times now. Cleve, did you bet the anthem? Were you scrambling to see what your books were grading it at?
No, I did not. I saw the same information, and I remember looking, and I couldn't find it at the time, and I just kind of ignored it. So I'm glad I didn't get a hold of it, because I would have been pretty pissed. I was sitting there timing it, and I was like, oh, it was 88 seconds, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, she's still going. So I think Reba pulled a fast one on everybody. So you got to be careful of that, and I'm glad I don't really touch any of the coin flip or the anthems unless I know for sure I have great information. So I did avoid that, fortunately.
Well, Tom says, I hit a 50 spot on purple Gatorade. That was another one, the delayed Gatorade math and how it was going to be, it was graded. Also, we got a great moment. Dan pointed out that Rob admitted finally at the end of the season that he's a true scumbag when he was fist pumping Deebo Samuel going down. Enough of that. Let's get into the game. And obviously the big story at the end of the game was the new OT rules. And Hitman, I want to start with you, but first I want to play this clip from Kyle Juszczyk because it was kind of eye-opening when I heard it.
You know what? I didn't even realize that the playoff rules were different in overtime. So I assumed you just want the ball because you score a touchdown and win, but I guess that's not the case. So I don't totally know the strategy there.
So, Hitman, not only did Kyle Juszczyk say this, Arik Armstead also said they were unaware of the rules. And meanwhile, Justin Reed says for the Chiefs that they've been practicing with the idea that these rules might happen. Are you surprised to hear the 49ers were unaware of the rules? Is that Kyle Shanahan blundering situational football and not preparing his team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a Bill Belichick. Maybe it was like a documentary or something like that. But I remember someone when they were talking about the Patriots was saying, like, during the peak of their dynasty, like at the start of OTAs or training camp or whatever it was, they'd always have like a rules official in or something. And they would just describe to the team, all right, this is what we're going to be enforcing this year. This is the changes in the rule book, whatever. And they devote like a lot of time to it because it's obviously very important. So, I mean, maybe it's just a few specific players that maybe were like me back in school and just slept through the meeting or something like that. I don't know. But if some of the best players on the team aren't cognizant of what the rule changes are, especially before the playoffs, maybe you talk about it also, because the regular season, I believe, is same old rules, but the playoffs have changed. So, yeah, I mean, it does seem Kyle Shanahan's a good coach, very good coach, but it does seem a little bit like malpractice if a lot of players were not aware of the situation and they're just finding it out at that moment.
You know, you mentioned the Bill stuff, Bill Belichick, and I thought it was interesting. I thought one of his early edges in his career was he practiced relentlessly situational football, and it felt like they were the only ones aware of situational football and what to do in those matters. Like I remember stories of Bill making them, and this is obviously before the NFLPA changed the practice rules, but they would practice outside in the elements because he said, we're going to play in games like this. I don't care. We're not going to go indoors and practice in comfort. I want us to be prepared for all situations. Cleve, the other part of that was the decision to, is it optimal to kick it or receive first? And obviously this is the first sample size. And like the basic rules are if both teams score and are tied, even if they're touchdowns, the third possession goes to the team who receives it first. That being said, there are some people who say it's unlikely that the team that scored second and got a touchdown would not go for two rather than punting it back to the team that scored. Cleve, what do you think is the optimal decision, or do you think there is no clear answer right now?
Yeah, I'll leave it to the guys that have actually run all the simulations and the numbers. I do remember when this rule was changed last offseason or 2 off seasons ago. That right away it was they intentionally moved to this sort of scenario, sort of situation to get as close to 50-50 from a win probability standpoint as it can, because obviously the whole Mahomes against Josh Allen situation occurred and Buffalo never even got the ball. Yeah. So they did, they made the rule specifically to make it almost a coin flip. And then, running some of the simulations that I saw some of the guys at ESPN talked about how it was near 50-50. So I think you can make a case either way. I mean, I honestly think it all comes down to, like you said, if the opposing coach who doesn't have the ball first, who has it second, whether they'll go for two or not. I think that is really the deciding edge for me as to whether I would get the ball first or not, because I think you can make a strong case either way. And the reason is because, again, that third possession, when it's sudden death, is such an advantage if it goes, punt, or field goal, especially punt, because you're going to have great field position typically, and your win probability skyrockets at that point. And so, if the other team is willing to go for two, if you score a touchdown first, that changes the math a little bit. And I honestly didn't suspect at any point, this is during the game while it was going on, instead of all coaches, Andy Reid, I mean, he never goes for two. He's gone for two once this entire season. I think he went for two 4 or 5 times last season. He's him and Shanahan are like two of the coaches that are most conservative. I mean, he kicks field goals at suboptimal optimal times all the time. So I never even considered that he would go for 2, but it sounded like after the game, based on some of these interviews, that they were prepared, and that's what they prepared for. So I'll give him credit for that. So that might have changed the math for me in terms of maybe deferring first. But I understand. I mean, people also have to consider, the Mahomes had that last drive, and they were on the field for what was 10 or 11 plays. The Niners defense they're gassed. So you would have had to throw them right back onto that field. So I don't think they would have had a chance. So I can understand, honestly, looking back on it and just understanding the rules now and just kind of, it's some of its hindsight. I think if I was San Francisco, I would not have kicked that field goal when they're 4th and 4 from the 9, because if you think about it, field goal is almost the worst case because if you don't get it, let's say you go for it and you don't get it. So Kansas City is pinned inside their 10-yard line. They probably punt the ball right on 4th and 1 at their own 34. I'm not sure if they go for it. So you actually, from a strategy standpoint, you're actually getting the ball back by not kicking the field goal. And so, obviously you run the risk of Kansas City coming down and kicking the field goal and you losing, but still, you lose out on the whole, extra down for Mahomes type of thing that everyone's talking about. So again, it goes both ways. I understand, both ways of thinking. I think at the end of the day, I have no problem if you think they should have deferred. I have no problem if you think they should have taken the ball first. I don't think he should be railroaded for this at the end of the day. That's, to me, like, you can have your opinion, but it's not strong enough where you're just going to kill Shanahan. My issue with him is what he did at the end of the first half. He has no idea when to use timeouts ever. The fact that he was letting Kansas City run the clock down, they could have had the ball back, I think, with about 45 seconds left if he just used his timeouts while Kansas City was inside the 10-yard line. And they could have scored before the half. Those are the things that bother me more about Shanahan than whether he deferred or kicked in overtime.
Well, he also he had a situation where he did go for it and it worked. And it's like, you
out of nowhere.
You're
that was
a great
not characteristic of him.
You're a great play designer, man. Like, why don't you go for it? Like, Hitman, when you're watching that game, when they settle for a field goal, you almost said, "Oh, they fucked up. They just gave away this game right now to Mahomes."
Yeah, I thought that, I try to think, everybody was killing Dan Campbell and the Lions from the previous week. But, imagine that was Dan Campbell and the Lions and they have 3rd and 4 from the 9-yard line. Remember, I thought that San Francisco should have maybe considered something similar to what Detroit would do. Is a lot of times in those situations, they'll spread teams out and they'll run it on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, or whatever, knowing that they have 2 downs to pick up this first down. I thought that if I was San Francisco at that point, I would have said that if it's 4th and 3, 4th and 2, we're going for it. Maybe you call a run, spread them out, call a run in that situation. And you pretty much have the mentality that we have to score a touchdown. And if we don't score a touchdown, at least we're going to back Mahomes up inside the 10-yard line. So that's where I had the biggest difference in opinion with San Francisco. I did think that I have no problem with Shanahan taking the ball in that spot. It's just, listen, it's within I know you're going against Mahomes, but it's within the range of outcomes that you go punt, or you go field goal, and then it becomes a sudden death at that point. Imagine if you're Shanahan, you defer, how stupid you feel if Mahomes punts on the first drive and then you punt, and now you just got to stop Mahomes from a field goal, or you go 3-3, and now I think that they made the right decision to take the ball. Just sometimes doesn't work out. But, it's just a game they get them to 4th and 1 on the last drive. They stop the play. They're Super Bowl champions, and we're not even talking about this, So, it's just a game of somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. Only one team wins the Super Bowl. You could kill 31 other coaches about a mistake that they made during the season, but there's one winner. So, and it came down to just it could have went either way. The entire game could have went either way.
It was, if you watch that 3rd down play too, John Feliciano gets hurt in the game, and it's like, okay, who cares? It's a guard, and Spencer Burford comes in. But if you watch that 3rd and 4 back over again, Ayuk beats his guy immediately who falls. Ayuk is in the back of the end zone wide open, and Purdy does not have the time to get to his second read because Chris Jones goes unblocked by Burford, who doesn't even get a hand on him, and Purdy has to get the ball out immediately. And it's like that one little domino effect potentially cost them a touchdown. TA, I actually want to talk to you about Kyle because I think there's a difference between being a great play designer and a great head coach. And I think we had this conversation briefly with Bobby Slowick, where it's like you like some of the concepts he uses in Houston, but you don't like the sequencing of play calls or fourth quarter aggression. Is it a fair statement to say Kyle Shanahan may be the best play designer in football, not a great head coach, still a good one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very fair. I've watched enough to see. I mean, he's very similar to McVay in that regard too. Like these guys, they're so brilliant at play design and play calling. They spend so much time on that side, that one specific kind of area that they're experts, that they just don't. Honestly, I think they just don't spend enough time or don't care to spend enough time on situational football and calling timeouts, all those sorts of things. And like I think that happens a lot where they're so like just buried in their playbook, trying to call the right play that they don't sequence like, okay, what do we do in this situation if we don't execute? Like, do we go for it? Do we, and he gets kind of caught with his pants down, like, okay, just let me go with the most conservative route. I really do think that that's what happens to these guys because they're so entrenched in their playbook that it causes them to not react correctly in the spot. And that's why you want that. Like, I don't know if I doubt Shanahan has a guy in his ear upstairs from an analytics department. I know a lot of coaches do. I know guys like Stefanski does, for example. They're willing to listen to what, hey, the situation is this, and you should do this, and the numbers say this, or go with your gut or whatever. I don't think he has somebody up there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't heard that. And I think guys like Shanahan get so praised and they're so much success that they just want to do it. They're very stubborn. They want to do things their own way because they've been so successful. And I think that could be a case here where, I think it would really behoove him to take more advice from his analytics department and situational football to improve that, because that is a clear mistake. I mean, this has cost him a lot. I mean, not only potentially this Super Bowl, a couple of years ago when I was holding a Niners to get to the Super Bowl ticket, it was like 40-1 with Jimmy G, and they went into the Rams and they punted on 4th and 1 at the Rams, like 45 in the fourth quarter, and just continually makes mistakes like this that they cost his team at the end of the day. So he's like good enough to kind of get him there, but from a situational standpoint, he's just not good enough. I just would hope and wish that he'd open up his mind a little bit more to getting help in that regard, because he truly needs it because he's so good everywhere else.
I agree. Hitman, talk about not being good enough. When Robert Saleh left, D'Amico Ryans came in, and if anything, the 49ers defense was, if not the same level, probably a little bit better than they were under Saleh. But then D'Amico Ryans leaves, and Steve Wilks did an adequate job. He had a lot of talent, but like I had no faith that Steve Wilks was going to draw up a defense to stop Mahomes on that last drive. Is he gone this offseason? Can you really run it back with Steve Wilks and this defense?
Yeah, I don't know if he's gone. Obviously, we're getting a little later in the process now where San Francisco is having a delayed start to defensive. A lot of teams have hired coaches. They've hired defensive coordinators and everything. But I'll say this, like it did seem like during the entire season, there might have been a little bit of a disconnect with Shanahan and Wilks. I remember the Vikings game when Wilks called that all-out blitz towards the end of the first half, and Kirk Cousins threw a long touchdown where Shanahan was pretty noticeably upset at Wilks. And I caught on the broadcast, I know Romo was mentioning it, about how Shanahan called a timeout on the Chiefs' last drive. And it was basically because Romo at least was saying that Wilks was showing all-out pressure, and Shanahan called timeout, basically said, like, no, we're going to do this, or whatever, we're going to stay back, rush 4. So it just seemed like there was a little bit of a disconnect throughout the season on how Shanahan and Wilks viewed this defense. And obviously the defense did take a step back this year. So, Do I think Wilks is back? I don't know. It's also a matter of, like I said, who do you replace him with? But I wouldn't rule it out. I'll say that. But yeah, I didn't have much faith that they were going to get a stop. Honestly, most defenses got gassed towards the end also. But it's just, I tweeted about it. Steve Spagnuolo is just the big game defensive coordinator. You know, he just always has that one schemed pressure, that one blitz that teams seemingly just can't pick up. Whereas Steve Wilks is just a more generic defense. And once defense gets tired and the front four gets tired, Mahomes is going to carve you up.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, we could talk about Harrison Butker, Jake Moody's extra point getting blocked, or Butker hitting 57-yarder, and all the coin flip situations that broke Kansas City's way. But I thought the real key was whenever it was a big third down, Spagnuolo sent the right blitz, like an all-out blitz, and Purdy had no time to get the ball out properly. And whenever San Fran did that, Kansas City always had the play drawn up to beat it. And I thought just on two high leverage third down plays for both teams, Kansas City's offense had a play that San Fran's didn't. And I think that is part of the reason why San Fran is not the champion today. Cleve, when I ask you, why do you think the Chiefs won the game and the 49ers lost the game? What is your answer?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just think that they when it comes down to who do you trust the most in specific situations, it's Kansas City. So it's not just one thing. I mean, it's Mahomes. Obviously, he never panics. Even on that 4th and 1, I was like more nervous than he was. It looked like, between him and then Andy Reid calling like just the perfect plays, and then defensively Spagnuolo, again, like you said, with the perfect blitzes and just timed to perfection, like just all of it, just the ability to make the correct. And I think just being there, just being experienced, just making the correct call at the right time. If you're going to say one thing, it's that. To me, it's kind of, and they did it everywhere, and like every situation, they made the right call and the right move. So, like I said, they game plan. That's game plan. That's preparation. That's experience. That's all of those things. Like they knew, Spagnuolo knew on 3rd and 4, right? And I even tweeted about it before it happened. I said, you got to go all out blitz. You either have to stop them or let them score a touchdown. Like you need Mahomes to have the ball, because if they get that first down, they can milk the clock and the game's over with a field goal. So,
yeah,
Spagnuolo, I mean, I retweeted it this morning. I think Ben Baldwin had the tweet, the video clip of McDuffie on that blitz. And it was just so perfect because he backpedaled. So Purdy didn't think he was coming. He like faked it and then he backpedaled. And then right at the snap, he went forward and it was timed perfectly. So, Ayuk ended up being wide open, but that's who McDuffie would have been on.
Yeah.
If he didn't blitz. And so he would have been double teamed. So the right call, according to, for Purdy at the time, was to throw that slant to Jennings. But because he was fooled, it turned out to not be the right call. It should have been Ayuk, but he would not have known. He had like a split second to make that decision. And so just those little things. And that's Spagnuolo knowing that Purdy is a shorter quarterback, and shorter quarterbacks have a much more difficult time seeing over interior pressure. And so, because you get balls batted down, it's tough to see, all those sorts of things. And so we saw, tip ball. And so he knew exactly, he prepared for that. He knew the type of play call that they would run, and they called the perfect blitz. So anyway, long story short, I think it's just being prepared to make the perfect call at the right spot. That's what won them that game.
It's funny, Cleve. This is such a copycat league, right? When someone shows something that works, the offseason is, we need to add that element that they have that we don't have. And this year, the nickel blitz, the cornerback blitz, was such an effective play. There's going to be conversations where teams are looking at, draft prospects and say, we need a big nickel that is capable of blitzing, because it was such a dangerous weapon. And I imagine a lot of defensive coordinators are going to be putting that into their playbook. Hitman, when I ask you the same question, why today are the Chiefs the champions and the 49ers not? What's your answer?
It was a coin flip game. That's as simple
as the coin landed on their side.
I mean, like, just stuff happens that's just not like can't San Francisco muffs the punt inside the 10, like one of the most reliable running backs in the league has that fumble on the opening drive.
Trent Williams, the best left tackle in football, on the second drive goes back-to-back penalty to kill it. It's like all the big guys had their worst moments.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like sometimes like people just overanalyze like what went wrong, whereas like if they just stop a 4th and 1, or if they just convert a 3rd and 4, like a 3rd and 4, like what's the probability that they convert that?
Well, wait a minute. So wait, here's the thing. Sorry, not to interrupt, but like, here's the thing. So this conversation is why I was laughing at all of the, I'm going to pick San Francisco, fade the public, like all that bullshit that I was hearing all week. That it's just so annoying, because people were saying, look, when push comes to shove in a close coin flip type game, I get Andy Reid, I get Steve Spagnuolo, and I get Patrick Mahomes. And what do those guys do? They have the experience, like I just said, the experience. They make the right plays all the time. Like when does Spagnuolo make the wrong call? When does Mahomes not make that, that fourth down RPO read where he pulls it, and instead of risking the dump off, he takes off and runs? Like, and what was that play call? They haven't shown that. How long? When have they run an RPO with Mahomes? It's like never happened. So like the reason you take Kansas City, that people were like mocking, it's too easy. It's Mahomes, Andy Reid. You can't just fall back on that. Well, I can, because they've proven it, and I trust those guys in that very specific spot in a coin flip game to make the right calls. Whereas Brock Purdy is going to throw that. He's going to throw a ball at the line. It's going to be tipped on a slant when we need the first down. Whereas Mahomes probably breaks out of that somehow, or he calls the right play. Like those are the things. Those are the ingredients in a close coin flip game. So when we say it's kind of variance, blah, 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 I get that. But okay, I'll take Mahomes and Andy Reid and Spagnuolo to be on the right side of that variance way more often than not. You can't shake your head, George. Here's
why I shake my head, Cleve, because I think anybody who analyzed the game, I made San Fran -1. And when I analyzed the game, I didn't come away with a definable edge for anybody. So like when people said I have an edge on the side, I just laughed to myself like, no, you don't. You know what edge I found when I evaluated the game was the under. And I remember we had a chat in our Forward Progress group chat, and Clive Bixby was asking Eric Eager, why doesn't he just take KC instead of the under? Because Eric was on the under as well. And I just thought, like, you really think it is more probable that Kansas City wins comfortably than this game stays under? I'm like, where is this hidden edge that I'm not seeing? Because like to Hitman's point, okay, one or two breaks and you say the Chiefs win. I thought the Chiefs had like 5 things break their way to win this game.
So I agree with you. And I wasn't trying to make the case that there's a huge edge on Kansas City. I was just saying, like, look, people are going to bet the Super Bowl whether you have an edge or not, right? So everybody was going to bet it. Everyone was going to bet a side or a total. And so, like, that's what I meant is like, all right, people are going to bet it and they're going to take a side. And so you had to take a side. And if it's
in that case
equal, in that case, Kansas City was the right play. And the people were I felt like they were only betting San Francisco. Well, not everyone. I mean, obviously pro bettors who have a model that, use season-long data and gets them to San Francisco. I get, but I'm just talking about just generally in the space. People were like, okay, everyone's on Kansas City, so I'm taking San Francisco for, my largest wager of the year, which is like that stuff is just insane. It's just a pure contrarian fade. It had nothing to do with San Francisco themselves. It was, there's no way that these people can be right about Kansas City and Mahomes and Andy Reid. And no, it's a coin flip game. If you told me it's a 50-50 shot in terms of a cover, I'm going to put my money, if I had to bet it because it's a Super Bowl, it's going to be on Kansas City. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, sure.
Like not necessarily if there was a great edge on the Chiefs. I didn't mean that.
Or if there's like a pick'em contest and it's like you had to, like, I see where the landing on the Chiefs side there. Just to me, like I heard analysis and people are like, there's clear edge on the side. I'm like, are we fucking evaluating the same game? Because I'm missing where it's a one-way edge on either team here. I see a game too close to call.
I bet Kansas City, and like I was just gonna say that it's like one play is the difference between George asking me, all right, what went wrong with Kansas City?
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm having a big long speech about, well, they didn't have any wide receivers that could separate, and that's what they got to address in the offseason. A lot of times, like, these games just come down to variance at the end,
Well,
you know. And
one of the funny thing is, though, about
City money line, but
one of the funny thing is, when you look at Kansas City, and again, we talked about this last week, George. I think, if you look at their season, and I think Sharp Clark had made this point too, and the more I dug into it, I mean, he's right. You just step back and you're like, okay, how many things went against Kansas City in the regular season? That's abnormal. The MVS drop, should have been PI, I guess, against Green Bay, right? With MVS, the Tony drops an easy catch in the opener. It gets bounced off his chest for a pick six. They should have won that game. Like 4 or 5 different things that totally went against them. I mean, obviously the Tony lining up off sides. Like there's 4 or 5 things that went against them that typically don't. And if they go their way, like they have a much better record, and we're looking at them differently. They also had bottom 10 in turnover EPA. Like they never caught a break from a turnover perspective. They led the NFL in penalties. Like there's just all these things, and they still made the Super Bowl because all those things regressed in the playoffs that kind of they normalized, and they won. Like that game yesterday, they would have lost in week 10 probably, right? Like that's the Philly game. That's the Buffalo game. So like it is definitely, a game of inches, but like the some of that regression, like to their credit, they fought through all of that flukiness from the regular season. And we're good enough because they got Mahomes, et cetera, and we're good enough to get to the playoffs, and it turned, their way. And so, that was almost like a full regression in the last four games, and that's how they won.
They both had that tale of 2 seasons, right? So Kansas City doesn't look good all year, and people are talking about, what's wrong with them, and then they peak in the last month, and they cut out the turnovers, and they're old Kansas City. And then the 49ers were like crushing people. I think they only played in 3 one-score games. Everything was a definitive win for the 49ers this year, or the one definitive loss against the Baltimore Ravens. And then they kind of snuck by Green Bay, and they kind of snuck by Detroit. And there was like the shifting opinion, whereas if you took last 4 weeks, Kansas City's at this level, and then San Fran's down here. But if you took the whole season, it was kind of more like this by the time you got to the final game. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic. Let's talk about next year, though, Hitman. 49ers are the favorites to come back to the Super Bowl from the NFC. My question is, are they still the best team in the NFC? And should they be? Are they worthy of being that team?
Yeah, I can't see a case to put anybody over them, just mainly because, for the NFC at least, because just mainly the NFC is wide open. Like there's not, you look at the top teams on the odds board in the NFC, Detroit, like I think that Detroit, I don't think they're even a lock for that division next year, because Minnesota, I think, depending how their offseason goes, they got a decent roster. At least we'll see what happens with the quarterback. And Green Bay is obviously going to theoretically take another step. Philly, I still have some questions about Jalen Hurts when the team is just not absolutely loaded. Do I think Jalen Hurts is an above average quarterback? Of course I do. But I don't know yet if he's in that second tier, let's say. Dallas, there's always going to be questions with them, and talk about like a hot seat and pressure that McCarthy's going to be under. So the NFC is wide open. So San Francisco, theoretically, like it seems like they're probably going to bring a lot of the same guys back. I think that they do need to get the offensive line better in the offseason, and the defense, specifically the secondary, probably needs a little bit of work. Getting Hufanga back from injury will be really big for them. But yeah, for me, San Francisco is the clear number 1 in the NFC.
Okay. Sticking with San Fran, and we'll get into all the teams at the end. We'll look at like Super Bowl lines and teams we value higher, lower. So Cleve Hitman hit on a few points. He said, they probably need a number 2 corner, not, outside across from Jarvarius Ward. And They probably need to beef up some of that O-line. And then they have the Ayuk thing. He's got to get paid, and he's very good at a lot of things. How do you think they need to prioritize their roster next year from those three big glaring holes? Or do you think it's something else?
I think the offensive line has to be number one. First of all, Trent Williams is getting older, so he's not going to be there forever. But the rest of that O-line is not very good, kind of hidden secret. I mean, the offense is so dangerous that, they get away with it with the quick passes and obviously McCaffrey. But their O-line needs help. And then I would say that's one. And then two would be, their secondary. I think between, the cornerback position and safety, they definitely need to add somebody there. Now, I mean, kind of the hidden, I felt bad. Dre Greenlaw's injury, that's a rough one. I mean, that ruptured Achilles, they lose a linebacker for a year now. He's going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
So that's just like a completely unfortunate, like horrible luck there. So, I mean, they've got draft picks. The good news, I think they have 4 in the top 3 rounds. So they're going to be able to replenish those positions. You obviously don't need to do anything at wide receiver or tight end or, running back. Like your skill guys on offense, you just kind of let them go again and kind of fill in the blanks elsewhere. I guess the other thing would be like, is this it for Purdy? Is this his ceiling? Can he get, better? Or is he going to fall back to earth? Is the NFL going to really, figure him out? Is it just, run zero blitz against them? Because it seems like that was working yesterday, and it's worked, with some of the other and some of the other games recently. So, there is a little, like, I think that they'll be okay, and I think they'll make the playoffs, barring anything major. But I don't think they're a lock. I would never take them at whatever price comes out. If it's, 5, if they're 5-1 or something to get to the Super Bowl, like I wouldn't touch that at all. I don't think and I do think that there is a lot of, how many times do we have to see the team that loses in the Super Bowl just struggle the next year? Like nobody thought the Eagles were going to do that. They fell, kind of fell off the map here. Like it happens year in and year out. And I do think it's a real thing. Again, I talk about the disease of me all the time. Like it's not necessarily there, but it's just, you get all the way out, get all the way to the end, and then you fail. And it's like, oh, I got to redo this all over again. You've got to, it's hard. And then guys want to get paid and all those other things. So they'll be good. They'll be fine. But I don't think that they're any sort of slam dunk to get back to the Super Bowl or anything like that.
All right, let's talk the Chiefs and him. And I'll start you off with, I guess they're 2 big pieces defensively, and they both played big roles, right? L'Jarius Sneed, who is a bona fide number 1 corner now, although they may have 2 of them, because I thought Trent McDuffie had an incredible game outside of that dumb penalty that he took. L'Jarius Sneed's a free agent. Chris Jones is a free agent. Are they going to try to bring back both, one or neither?
To be honest, I haven't even started with next year prep to where like I know much about their salary cap situation or anything like that. I would say that if I had to choose between one of them on who I'm bringing back, it's probably Jones that I would choose. But I just feel like it's harder to replace that interior superstar defensive lineman than it is for Sneed. Because Spagnuolo, one thing we know about him is he's such a good coordinator that they're going to get a lot of pressure typically. And obviously when there's a lot of pressure, you're not going to have to cover for as long. But I mean, in the AFC, the Chiefs, that's got to be the team again, like the clear favorite, in my opinion. I mean, they're probably going to get better at wide receiver. We know that. You can't get much worse than what they were. I do think it's a little concerning. Kelsey's going to be another year older, and I know that he did tear it up in the playoffs, but during the regular season, he did look like a player that's lost a step. But, I mean, they're going to be the favorite again. When we did our picks for the Super Bowl on the last week of Forward Progress, and we had a forced play, and of course it was a lean or whatever, so it won. But I took Kansas City, and I just said simply, like, I think I've taken Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, like forced play for the last 6 years or something. As long as they have number 15, that's going to be my forced play. So
Well, when
yeah,
your floor is the AFC Championship game.
Exactly. I mean, he's been to the AFC Championship every season as a starter. So
Cleve, it's kind of that interesting debate of like corners oftentimes just because they flourish one place doesn't mean they'll have success in the next place. We've seen a lot of corners get paid and then never replicate what they do, and it's not exactly a stable position where year after year, other than the truly great ones like a Jalen Ramsey. What do you do? Do you because I actually think they ripped the Band-Aid off and let them both go. And the reason is Jones wants top of the market money, and I think he's at the age now where I don't think you can give it to him. And then they let Charvarius Ward go, and then they developed Snead, right? And then they drafted McDuffie and developed him. I agree with him, and I actually think under Spag's system, you can keep churning and developing corners. I don't think they're going to sign either guy, especially now. Here's the caveat: like if L'Jarius Snead doesn't get top of the market money, like, you know, sometimes we project the corner is going to get huge money elsewhere, and then he doesn't find that, and then he ends up like, you know, Jamel Dean or Carlton Davis, and they return to their team at, you know, a top 5 salary. I think they go that way. On top of it, do you think offensively, a weapon is top priority?
No. I mean, I think they've proven that they don't need a superstar at receiver. I mean, Rashid Rice is on his rookie deal still, so you could just get another. I mean, fill in the blank, Juju Smith-Schuster type, you know, kind of, you know, solid veteran receiver. I mean, there's going to be guys that maybe are a little older that are just want to win a title that are good enough to be kind of a number 2 or number 3 and be fine. I think so in terms of the Jones Snead debate, I think Jones is 100% gone. Like I would lay a decent amount that he's gone at his age. If they really wanted him, they would have just ripped up his contract this past season. They didn't do that. They just converted some money. So I think he's 100% gone. Someone's going to pay him top dollar. I think Snead's interesting. So he's still 27, but they've developed quietly a good amount of depth. Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson are young guys, and they've only played 2 seasons each. They're both solid players. Now, you know, they're going to have to both step up into different roles. Williams would have to be the number 1 outside corner because, you know, McDuffie is the slot corner. Now, maybe McDuffie goes outside. I don't know. I mean, he's a little smaller, but I think I could see a scenario where Snead wants too much and they let him go and they just kind of let the young guy step up. And, you know, they also let Jones go too. I think their offensive line needs help. I mean, yes. Donovan Smith, by the way, left tackle's a free agent and he wasn't very good anyway. And so I think they're going to have to do something at tackle. They're going to have to figure that out between Orlando Brown and now him. You know, they're going to have to do something there, hopefully for a longer period. That might be their number 1, you know, kind of the first round pick type of deal. So I could see them letting both defenders go, fix the offensive line a little bit, add a receiver to get, you know, a little more juice. And then, you know, you just let the young guys develop on defense. They're clearly really good at drafting corners. So maybe they can just, you know, pick another, you know, 3rd, 4th round pick and hope that guy develops as a backup. And it's, you know, kind of like the farm system. So I would say Snead has a better shot of staying than Jones, but there's a chance that both could be gone.
You know, I remember after the Bucs lost, they went and said, okay, let's fix the O-line, right? And then they went out and they traded for Orlando Brown. And then they signed Joe Thuney, and then they draft Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Now, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, they knocked it out of the park. Like, they got 2 top-of-the-line starters in the 3rd and 5th round. Now, Joe Thuney is going to be 32 next year and coming off a major injury. Their tackles were bad. Like, Donovan Smith, they got away with a lot of holding last night. Like, there was a play where Javon Hargrave got wrangled by the neck, still broke out of it and chased Mahomes down and made the tackle. And I'm like, come on. Anyways, that's besides the point. But I think this might be the offseason. They say we need to refix this O-line again and put some resources into it. And I kind of think that's where the money gets allocated. Let's talk the big debate. All right. Mahomes and Tom Brady. It's time. We have to have this discussion now. Mahomes has 3 Super Bowls, all MVPs in basically 6 years as a starter. He's been to 4 Super Bowls. He's been to 6 AFC championship games. And I like to think of when I describe greatness versus talent, Tom Brady's the greatest player of all time because he has the accolades that say he is. But when I say who's the greatest thrower of the ball of all time, it's Patrick Mahomes, because Mahomes in his first 6 years is way better than Brady ever was in his first 6 years. Brady was not the undisputed best quarterback in the league until maybe year 10 or 12. And even then, it was still the convo with Peyton. Mahomes has been the undisputed best quarterback in the league for 4 years now. And he's having the Michael Jordan arc where now he's ruining careers. Kyle Shanahan doesn't have a ring because of this guy. And Lamar Jackson's never been to a Super Bowl because of this guy. And he's starting to ruin other great players' careers. And I don't understand why people think it's a hot take when I say that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time. The only thing left is, does he have a career long enough to rack up accolades? Because so far, he's got stats that Brady never had this early in his career. And he's got accolades at a pace that Brady never had. So I'm going to start with you, Hitman. Weigh in on this. Is it a hot take to try to say Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time?
If you make me choose and you say like both players are in their prime, and well, who knows if we've seen Mahomes' prime? We think we've seen it, but we don't know that yet as a fact. But if you make me say like which player would I rather have in their prime, it would be Mahomes. And if I had to start a franchise with all the all-time great quarterbacks and I had the first pick, I would take Mahomes. But like you said, it's just too premature to say the greatest quarterback of all time stuff because of the resume. And it's going to be a while until Mahomes has that resume to do what Brady did, to win 7 Super Bowls, but to play until an age that nobody has ever sniffed. Like Favre was good at 40, but stunk at 41. Breeze and Peyton Manning got to that age and couldn't play no more. Nobody was able to play till that age. And he played till 44 and won a Super Bowl at 42, his first season with a new team, and probably should have won MVP that year. For me, it's just the resume just is going to keep Brady in the longevity, because probably the best attribute that Brady had was the longevity for 20 freaking years to be 100%. That great of a player. And that cannot be diminished, how impressive 100%. That was, especially after leaving Belichick and winning a Super Bowl the next year. So for me, it's definitely Brady. But again, like if I had to take any quarterback in their prime, one game, I'm probably going Mahomes.
I think Brady cemented it like year 37 on the 6-year run that he had there that no other quarterbacks ever achieved. But Cleve, when I say, okay, greatest quarterback of all time, but I also say who's the best you've ever seen, what are the answer to both those questions?
Yeah, no, it's Mahomes for me right now. Just because, first of all, this is the only time he's had like a real defense too. Every other time it's been just him kind of outscoring everybody. So the fact that he finally has a really good defense too to go with it is pretty impressive. The fact that he's doing it with one rookie wide receiver and then nobody else at wide receiver. So, and in a shaky offensive line, like he is doing, kind of stepping up and doing it all. These are the only 2 quarterbacks in my lifetime where you have the utmost confidence that when they have the ball at the end of the game, they're gonna win the game. Yeah. Like those are the only 2 guys that are like, I am 100% confident that that's going to happen. And there's no one else, even like Peyton Manning, as good as he was, like there are guys that just, they were not good enough. So, it's credible. I was looking at some of the numbers, Brady didn't even win his first MVP till age 30. It was when he got Randy Moss and they were undefeated. That was that was 30 years old. That was his first MVP, which I couldn't believe.
He's only won it 3 times, Cleve. Only 3 times was he thought of as the undisputed best player in the league on any given year. Mahomes has done 2 already, and he's probably going to pass Peyton's 5 one day.
The only thing that would be different is Mahomes has been so creative when he gets in the pocket. Like it's not just pure drop back and firing. Like the last year or 2, it's more about like he just kind of sits and waits and then creates. And then is able to make a play out of structure. And as he gets a little older, he's not going to be able to do that because he's going to lose some athleticism. So eventually he's going to, have to be more of a pocket quarterback per se. And so, is he going to be able to do this till he's 40? Probably not. And so, but then if he can win more titles and win more MVPs and all that by age 35, then it won't matter about longevity. So he kind of has to get it done in a more condensed period versus Brady. But I just think from a pure greatness standpoint, like he's not even 30 and he's doing this. It's pretty incredible. So I would say Mahomes right now.
Yeah, I'm with Mahomes is my revenge tour. I fought with Brady maniacs for like 15 years that Peyton was better, and then I finally had to concede the point when Brady just kept winning and then had a finality to his career that Peyton didn't. But I'm like, Peyton won MVP 5 times. Peyton was the best player in the league more times than Tom Brady was, but Peyton didn't have the longevity. So my revenge tour is Patrick Mahomes is everything you guys pretended Tom Brady was, because he is as dominant as Peyton is statistically, but he also has this innate killer instinct that Brady had that maybe Peyton didn't have, where every time he had the ball in the fourth quarter, you knew he was going to win the game. Let's look at 2025 early Super Bowl futures look. Like this is the fun part, although I don't get into this stuff this early. I want to pull up Pinnacle's odds and take a look at it and walk through. Take a moment, maybe scroll down, Jason, a little bit, just so we could see what else is out there. I want you guys to just think on it for a minute, and then Hitman, if you can start us off, is there anything that stands out to you as wait a minute, this team's overpriced? How are they the third favorite to win? And then is there anyone that stands out to you like, whoa, that's kind of low? I think they're better than they're priced as far. I'm not asking you to tell me if this is a good bet, but if they're 20th to win the Super Bowl in odds, do you think they have a more realistic shot? So which are those 2 teams for you in the good and the bad?
So you want me to give you also one that I think's overpriced, like that I definitely wouldn't bet?
Or you're like this team's the 4th favorite to win the Super Bowl, Dallas? Come on. Or this team's the 15th favorite. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I'll caveat and say that
Jason, leave those up so we can see them. Yeah.
I typically don't get involved in the Super Bowl market. Like I'm mostly season wins, look ahead, game of the year lines, all that stuff is how I'll try to take advantage of a thought. And to be honest, my thoughts could change a ton. I haven't even thought much about next season already. But just like a quick glance.
These are leans, Hitman. These are leans.
We're
not going to hold you to this.
If they're leans,
graded.
If they're leans, the market might move like 1,000 cents off of what I say if I call it a lean. But I would say I'm only looking at teams in the NFC right now. The AFC is just so freaking top heavy, and you got Mahomes at the very top of it, to where I want to look at teams in the NFC. I mean, we pretty much know, right, George, that the Chiefs are going to be in the AFC Championship, right? We'll just lock that up.
Trying to guess who the other team is Aaron.
So if I had to look at teams in the NFC, I think that Chicago is way overvalued.
That was mine. I cannot believe
I disagree.
They are hovering around the top.
I'll disagree with you guys. Go ahead.
I'll say TA. I'll say Chicago's overvalued just because. I mean, you're gonna have a rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams. Like, are you? And I mean, I probably would. It depends what Minnesota does in the offseason, but there's a realistic case that Chicago might be 4th in the division, depending what Minnesota does in the offseason. In my opinion. But yeah, I say undervalued. Maybe the Rams I could see being undervalued. They had so many young players, and this was viewed as their rebuilding year. They still made the wild card game. They could have easily beat Detroit in that game. So they finally have some draft picks this year. They have their 1st round pick finally. So I could see the Rams being a little bit undervalued. And I think, I like Minnesota's roster. I like that Brian Flores, who was one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, and he did it with absolute garbage personnel on defense. You have a general manager that I believe in, and you have really good skill position players that are surrounding whoever your quarterback is. Like, we'll see if they bring back Cousins in the offseason. I guess I would prefer that if I was betting on Minnesota right now, because he is the 12th best quarterback in the league or something like that. So, yeah, I would say Minnesota and the Rams, and Chicago's the team that I'm surprised that they're so high.
Cleve, what about you? Because Chicago is also my overpriced thing. I disagree. Going to a rookie quarterback has them closer to a Super Bowl contender than they are a playoff team.
Yeah, so maybe I should caveat in terms of just winning the Super Bowl, yeah, because rookies don't do that. But I think from a position, if you're just looking at positioning in the NFC, I really do like Chicago, mainly because I think their defense is legitimate, and they did a lot last year. Towards the back half, they got Sweat under contract. They got they've got their own pick, not just the number one pick. So, they've gotten up, and plus whatever they get for Fields. So they're going to have a ton of draft capital that they could also use. They could trade for veteran, star players, whatever they want to do. I just look at, again, this is very, very early. I knew that we were going to at least look at this today. So I just threw on some of my, I do this offseason preview in the summertime. I really dig in. It'll be right after the draft in May and June. I spend like 2 months digging through all these teams and regression candidates and all those sorts of stuff. And so I just high level was looking at some of the numbers, and the Bears are, I've got a metric that's kind of like Pythagorean win expectation in terms of looking at use fourth quarter, kind of early fourth quarter win percentages versus actual win percentage. And the Bears were the second most unlucky team in the NFL last year based on that. So you get a potentially really good defense. You get, who knows? I mean, if Caleb Williams is CJ Stroud, I'm not saying he is or not. I don't have an opinion on that. But if he is a legitimate, like, franchise top 10 quarterback, we've seen guys already like can make that leap right away. You've got DJ Moore. You've got your own draft pick. I mean, you've got a lot of money to spend. Like, this can be a really good team right away. So I guess just because historically Bears, rookie quarterbacks don't go to the Super Bowl. I guess from that standpoint, you might be right. But from I was looking more positioning in terms of where kind of their upside. I actually don't think they're that bad from a positioning standpoint. So it'd be more about like a win total or win the division, I think, better than maybe the Super Bowl look. I would say
I think their ceiling's limited, because I agree. Like, Cleve, by the end of the season, they were my 12th power rated team by the end of the year. I just don't think with a rookie quarterback, I don't think you have a ceiling of Philly, who's literally right above them, and the Rams with Stafford, who's right below them. That's
what I was going to say. Philly is the undervalued. Philly at 25-1 makes no sense. I'm actually stunned by that number. It's the first time seeing this. So yeah, they have they had a hiccup, but they still have all their major parts.
Yeah, Philly.
Howie Roseman's not going to sit on his hands. I can tell you that after what happened last year.
So, they also got Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. Those are huge coordinator upgrades. And you got
Philly that far behind Green Bay. Like that's a lot. Like 1,000 cents behind Green Bay. Yeah.
I will say I do agree. Minnesota. Okay. So one thing I like to do is finding a team in kind of that mid range, like 30 to 40-1, that is a quarterback away. Okay. So Minnesota has Flores. They got young defenders. They've got a stud left tackle. They've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. Like, they are loaded. If you find those teams in this range, that is, if you give them a quarterback, they could be a Super Bowl contender. Kind of like, I mean, obviously there is no Tom Brady available this year, but kind of like Tampa was in that range, right? Like, Tampa was a 500-ish team with a lot of weapons, and we're just like, if they could just get a quarterback, this team could be dangerous. And people made some real money on that by kind of getting in early. If you wanted to take a stab at a team like that, I think that's a perfectly good spot. And I think Kwesi, their GM, very analytically focused guy, came from the Browns, was with the Niners before that. He's going to go after a quarterback hard. He may trade up for one. He may trade for, a good veteran. I don't know. They may bring Cousins back. I think that's a team that was playing really well before Cousins got hurt, that was on their way to competing. So that's a team at 40-1 that I would take a stab at, just in case they got their quarterback, their quote unquote, their Aaron Rodgers or their Tom Brady. I don't know who that is. There's always a quarterback or two that comes out of nowhere that wants to be traded, or you don't expect to be available. We've seen a lot more lately. Somebody like that, Matt Stafford range. that can get them to the top. I think that's a team that I think is undervalued from the NFC standpoint. But I think the NFC is going to be fun. I don't think it's honestly like teams like Chicago. I think Green Bay, you know, as much as I love them this year, like they're probably overvalued at this number.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Jordan Love train has left the station. They were undervalued offseason. They'll be one of the more overvalued teams this year.
Yeah.
One of the things, or one of the reasons why I was big on Green Bay last year is I like to project the leap year, right? Like when you project the leap year correctly, you get Lamar Jackson 14-2 year 2 MVP season, and you get an incredible price on Baltimore. If you projected the Mahomes year 2 trajectory, so Jason, if you can pull up the odds one more time, I saw a big discrepancy that I didn't understand. Like you scroll up, and Houston is plus 2,200. Then you scroll down, and Indianapolis is plus 6,500. And I've got an issue with that because these are two teams that came down to the last game of the year for the division. This is a soft division that's very winnable. Anthony Richardson, we still don't know what his potential ceiling is. Like if it is Lamar-esque, that number is way off base. They've got the 4th most salary cap, and I know that they haven't tended to spend it, but there's a window open right now with Anthony Richardson making what he is making. And I think Indy at 65 to 1 range is mispriced because I think they're brilliantly coached. And to me, that's the boom. Like if you project Anthony Richardson is this unbelievable weapon that people have to account for, suddenly that's a dangerous team that already won 9 games without him.
I'll say this.
Yep.
I know the odds are different because they're in the AFC, so it's harder to win the Super Bowl. But the Giants and the Raiders, well, the Raiders are in the AFC also. The Raiders are ahead of the Colts. Listen, if anybody wants straight up right now, season wins, Colts versus Raiders, hit me up.
Yeah.
Hit me
Hey,
up.
George,
DMs
I mean, you're preaching the – yeah.
I know.
Minimum 5K bet, we'll say. Minimum 5K because long hold. But, yeah, give me Indy.
Cleve, I know these are your guys from last year, but I'm building off of it, right? Like that's mispriced. You're telling me Houston is 44 to 1 points better than Indy? In what world? Like where is that definitive difference? And I love Steichen, and when I marry a great play caller to a potentially boom quarterback that we don't have a sample size on, I think there's some value there. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Hitman, thanks so much for joining us on Monday. Bear with me. We got some off-season plans to talk about. We're working on a brand new weekly shows that will run this offseason, like with rotating panel of our regular contributors, Hitman, Suma, TA, Sharp Clark, Eric Eager, Rob Pizzola, and myself. We'll be talking free agency, of course, the NFL draft. Speaking of the draft, our On the Clock mock draft series will begin in early March. Make sure to follow on Twitter or X at the Hammer HQ for details in the coming week. That's it for me. The list of thank yous will be a little bit longer just because I want to thank everybody involved in making Forward Progress a huge success this football season. It starts with Rob Pizzola. His leadership is awesome. His work ethic, doing all those watch alongs. I don't know how he does it, especially when it's a Dallas game. I could never put myself through that. Alex Merrill working tirelessly behind the scenes, always on people trying to get interesting new guests. Of course, Cleve TA and Suma, who joined me on Mondays and did a great job breaking down stuff. Suma also worked on Wednesday's show. Sharp Clark on Tuesdays worked with me, and he was a great help to the channel. Eric Eager, Hitman, and Suma with Rob giving you their best bets on Wednesday. Jason held it down on Thursdays with Eric Eager and Hitman, as well as on Fridays with Jack Miller, John Legeza, and Matthew Friedman. Clive Bixby and Rob doing that first look of the lines on Sunday nights. I know a lot of people started their Monday mornings listening to that stuff. We had some great fill-in hosts this year: Drew Dinsick, Adam Chernoff, Austin Mock. Producers Zach and Jacob also working behind the scenes. All our watch-along guests, there's too many to name. They brought entertainment and made the games a lot of fun to watch. Of course, our great sponsor Pinnacle, not just for supporting the show and the network, but for their contribution to the sports betting ecosystem. We need more sharp books in here that allow people to get down real-sized bets. And I saved the most important thank you for the end. Thanks to you, the audience. Honestly, there is no show without you guys. I remember during COVID when the WWE could not perform in front of an audience and the quality of the show went down. Honestly, audience makes the entire show. I hope you had a great season betting wise and from an entertainment perspective. And we'll talk to you soon. Until next time.